what we're going to do in this conversation is look at how we can do good literature review and then contribute to innovation, or the contribute or our contribution in our field. So this is mainly like what I told you, a review. What we're going to do in this conversation is explain the importance of literature in your research paper. We're going to quickly discuss the literature review process. Um, I'm going to share to you some databases that wherein we can locate credible literature that may be used in your research project or research paper. And then because I am the intellectual property management officer of SLSU, we're going to discuss the concept of plagiarism in the context of research ethics and as members of the academic community. So, um, during the first time that I um, submitted a journal article for publication, the first uh, feedback that I got was lack of conceptual contribution and inconsistent foundation. I was a little bothered because I thought I critically analyzed my data. I thought that I contributed to my field of study. But one of my peers in graduate school told me that, did you do your literature review well? Uh, were you able to position your research in the field? Or were you able to assure your examiners or your um, readers that you are contributing new knowledge to your field? And then I realized the value of literature, of good literature review, when I also got into patent prosecution. Because in patents, you should prove that your technology or your development or the new process that you say is an innovation or an invention should have novelty. Ibig sabihin po, bago po siya. And then it should have inventive step. That means your technology or the solution that you propose from your study should not be obvious to the person skilled in the art. That means, for example, one of the technologies that I am reviewing right now is it's a lemongrass extractor or a lemongrass oil extractor. So if we're going to put, parang kasi po, bago po kami nag-evaluate ng technology, tinitingnan po muna natin kung saan po siyang field. So let's say it's mechanical engineering field. But then, yung pong aking tinitingnan na technology, yung technology po natin dito po sa SLSU ay obvious na po siya sa mga mechanical engineer. So, it's not something that is inventive or novel. So, pag po siya ay hindi na bago sa mga sa a certain field, mahirap na po siyang i-defend na siya ay isang bago o nag-contribute po siya sa ating field of study. So, in science or in research, our goal really is to contribute to the field of study, to contribute knowledge to the field of study. Because as we see, science is a collective and cumulative endeavor. That means there is an existing knowledge, and our research, our researcher's goal is to contribute to that knowledge. Ibig sabihin po, to add on to that knowledge. Mahirap pong mag-add on kung yung ating pong dadalhin sa table ay luma na o alam na siya ng mga experts sa field natin. So, what we can do to really look into literature, tingnan po natin kung ano po ang nagawa na para po ang ating pong study ay relevant. So, before we look into the steps of literature review, let us first define what literature is. So, I looked into different sources of definitions of literature. And it says that literature is a collection of published information on a particular research topic, such as books, journal articles, which is of academic value. I underlined here published information. So, um, when I teach research to our undergraduate students, they sometimes ask me if they can cite unpublished information. And because they're undergraduate students, sometimes we don't expect them to publish in journals or to present this in, let's say, international conferences. So sometimes we don't require them to publish to cite published information. Kasi po pag sa research ethics, kung susundin po natin yung research ethics, pag po gagamit tayo ng unpublished information, sabihin po natin yung thesis or yung dissertation, kailangan po nating magpaalam dun sa mga authors bago po natin gamitin yung kanilang unpublished information. Yun po yung standard operating procedure sa research ethics. But then as advanced in our field, and especially if it is our goal to publish in a reputable journal, we should use published information. Yung pong ating pong mga journal articles na peer-reviewed and are from reputable databases. So why is this so? Because the control in research and other professional realms, the control over the production of professional knowledge is clearly in the hands of the profession. So, pag po hindi po siya published, hindi pa po siya peer-reviewed, hindi pa po siya nakita ng mga ibang experts dun sa field na yon, hindi po natin masasabi na yung ating pong ginagamit na information, parang hindi po tayo ma-assure na those are reputable or credible sources. So let us just have a review. So what is literature review? So literature review synthesizes literature and identifies common and emerging approaches, notable patterns and trends, areas of conflict and controversies, and gaps within the relevant literature. Over and over again, we tell our students that literature review is not just a list of theories, a list of methodologies that were done. So, di ba, lagi po nating sinasabi, but sometimes we also forget it. Because I'm also a graduate student, sometimes I forget, and my professors would always tell me that a literature review is not just a list of information about a certain field of study. Literature review is much more than that. You need to critically analyze each literature, look at the notable patterns and trends, and look at conflict and controversies among the literature. So when you look at those controversies, you would be able to look at the gaps in knowledge. Saan po ba nagkulang yung field of study na ito? Saan pa po ba tayo pwedeng mag-contribute to fill in those gaps? So, the main goal of literature review is to position your research project. Saan po ba ako makaka-contribute? Baka may certain conceptual framework, let's say, and meron po yan different variables. Yung mga ibang variables na pag-aralan na. So, you're going to position yourself to contribute to that field of study so that magiging relevant po yung ating research. So, the main goal of the literature review is to identify the position of your own research project as a viable way of addressing a current gap in knowledge. We will talk more about this statement dun po sa ating pagsusulat ng literature review for a journal article or for a research. So here is an example of one of my readings. Kung makikita nyo po dito, this is just a part of a short literature review from a journal article. And kung makikita nyo po, hindi po siya list of literature. for example, hindi po, kunwari, White studied about this, and then Haggard studied about this. So, ang ginawa po ng author ay pinagsama-sama niya kung ano ba ang mga studies na same stance, same position. So as you can see here, let me read it to you. That is, most relevant studies in the field underscore the importance of the developmental state and its bureaucratic leadership. And as you can see in the parenthesis, nilagay niya na po yung mga authors na same yung stand or same sinabi din po nila. So, bago mo po ito magagawa, kailangan niyo pong to critically analyze the literature. And then, ginurok niya din po yung iba po yung stand. Others emphasize culture and institutions that enable the so-called Confucian work ethic and culturally unique organizational practices, and together brought about their economic miracles. And then here, in the next statement, the author had his own critical analysis. So, kung makikita niyo po, ito po yung sinabi, this is what this group of authors said, and then this is what a group of authors said. However, there are studies that have offered alternative explanations to the East Asian economic success. So as you can see here, it's not just merely a list of what authors did, but more of a critical analysis of the literature that the author reviewed. So here is an example of one of the articles that I have read. So dito naman po, ganun din po, ginurok niya, many studies have been published regarding the dominant families of vascular plants in Mount Makiling, Mount Banahaw, Mount Palay-Palay, and Mount Makulot. However, these studies focus mainly on wood tree species and not lower vascular plants such as ferns. So as you can see here, after you have reviewed literature, makikita nyo po yung mga research gaps. Kung mga nagawa na to sa mga places na to, tapos ito yung mga species na mostly pinag-aralan nila, why don't I go to another species that have limited studies? So, ganun po yung ating pong ginagawa sa ating pong literature review. So, besides contributing to knowledge or contributing to your field, other objectives of your literature review would be to limit the discussion. Sobrang dami na po nating knowledge na makukuha, and it's just in our fingertips sa Google. Kailangan po natin gumamit ng right keywords para sa ating pong field of study. So, our literature review would define the concepts, what we really need. For example, iba po sa, let's say, business, iba po ang ibig sabihin ng risks compared po sa amin sa environmental science. Iba rin po ang ibig sabihin ng risks. So, in literature review, you will be able to limit the discussion and clear out main concepts. You would also reveal theories of your research and establish your arguments in your paper. So, let us just review the literature review process. So, di ba po, ang nangyayari po dyan pag tayo ay nagli-literature review, we locate literature, and then we review the literature. Sa sobrang dami po, parang filter out natin kung ano po ang kailangan natin or kailangan nating gamitin dun sa ating literature. What would be the best literature that would help me in my study, that would help me contribute to knowledge. And then the last one would be writing the literature review, which is actually, I would say that that would be the second hardest, because the hardest would be reviewing the literature, looking at what you really need in your literature review. So the first step would be locating the literature review. So what are you looking for, and how could could I look at the credible literature? So, ito po ay alam nyo na po. So, your categories of information sources, I would say that nakadepende po sa study nyo. Pwedeng nakadepende sa study nyo kung gagamit kayo ng tertiary or secondary sources. Let's say, you're going to do a textual analysis or of blogs, let's say. Of course, you're going to use the tertiary sources. But then, if you're going to do the literature review, wag na po natin, as professionals, wag na po tayong gumamit ng secondary and tertiary sources. Yung when we say secondary and tertiary sources, that could be your books. When we say secondary sources, that could be your books, your magazines, maybe your news articles. When we say tertiary sources, that could be blogs, maybe other news articles that is based on secondary sources. But as professionals in our field, and our goal is to make academic contribution, let us use primary sources. So those are the journal articles. So these are written by people who had the first-hand account. So yung mga journal articles po, di ba, sila yung nagsulat ng paper nila, sila po yung naggawa ng experiment, sila po yung nag-analyze. So they had a first-hand account. And then usually, our primary sources are peer-reviewed. So how can you filter out credible literature? So when we say credible, it's usually trusted or reputable. So you can use the radar framework to analyze your literature. When we say radar framework, ginagamit po yan ng mga information experts to look at credible literature. So yung radar po, R, rationale, A, authority, D, date, A, accuracy, R, and relevance. So when we say rationale, when you look at a certain journal article, let's say, look at the purpose of the article. When you look at documents uploaded online, bakit po ba in-upload to ng author? So, sa tingin niyo po ba it is made to be objective and not and these are not just mere opinions of a certain author? And then A, authority is you look at the affiliations of the authors. Sila po ba ay, for example, kung tungkol po ba yan sa environmental science, siya po ba ay ecologist, siya po ba ay biologist, siya po ba ay nag-graduate sa environmental science, affiliated po ba siya sa environmental organization? So you can look at those are some of the factors that you can look for credible literature. Date, it depends. But for example, if you're going to do a study on history, of course, you can look at the foundational literature about a certain subject na wala pong limit sa ating wala pong limit dun sa date. But then if you're going to look at the state of the art or kung ano na po yung updated or technologies that you want to contribute to, of course, important po yung date. So dapat po yung mga ating information hindi na po siya obsolete. And then A, accuracy, of course. So dapat po wala pong mga false information. And our relevance, has it contributed to the field? Is it the right context? For example, I remembered in one of the studies of my students, they would look into to environments that are not tropical, but then that would not be applicable to our cases because, for example, if you look at biodiversity of plants, let's say in Antarctica, it won't be applicable to our environment. So it is not relevant to our research. So that would be a certain framework that you can use to look at credible information. So let us look at some open access databases. Some of the databases that I'm going to share to you has paid, you need to pay for it, or for example, you need to be part of a certain organization to have access to it. But I noticed that during this pandemic, marami pong mga articles na naging free dun sa mga databases na ito. So for example, one of the credible databases could be Nature. So yung Nature po, it's a journal database or scientific database that is established by Springer. Tapos, kunwari po, ilagay niyo po yung keywords niyo dun sa search bar. Makikita niyo po ito po, nakikita niyo po yung red, yung open. So that means you can access the whole article in Nature. If there is that this open text na red. So, yung iba po, of course, na journal, wala po siyang open. But this Nature, you can be assured of the credibility because it is indexed by Web of Science, and this is produced or published by Springer. Another one that I always go to is Taylor and Francis, TNF Online. So, marami po silang free journal articles. So just go to TNF Online. But of course, for example, if you're a graduate school from another university, some of the universities would have all the articles for free. So, pero po, kahit po, kunwari, wala ako sa university kung saan po ako pumapasok, nandito lang po ako, sa SLSU, which we don't have access to, marami naman po silang free journals. For example, when you search, for example, in the search bar, your field of study, and then you would look at the list of journal articles that are available, you can look at the right side. Meron po ditong check. Yung check po dito na green. Ibig sabihin po niyan, free po yung whole journal article. And then, another one would be scienceopen.com. This one has also, dito po sa Science Open, meron po dito mga books. Maybe you can even use it in your classes. Mostly the articles here are open access. Makikita niyo po yung mga open access journals kung meron po siyang, ito po, download PDF. So, dito po, pwede po kayo makakakuha ng credible sources. And then the other one that I always go to is sciencedirect.com. So, same thing. If you're going to go to the research bar, and then, for example, research, here I used a forest because I'm teaching Res 1 to forestry students. So, I looked for a forestry-related journal, and then, kung makikita nyo po dito, yung download PDF, kung may ganun po siya, ibig sabihin po, free po yung article. This one is for education sources. Yung ERIC po, Education Resources Information Center. So this has also a lot of open access journals that are peer-reviewed. So dito po siya sa eric.ed.gov. Yan po. Kung makikita, for example, when you search in ERIC, you would look at, meron pong indication na peer-reviewed po siya. Ayan po, peer-reviewed, and then you can download the full text. So ito po, good. It's also a good one for education-related sources. The next one is for social science researches. Though marami din po ako nakita dito na the environmental science, science sources. So this is the Social Science Research Network, ssrn.com/index.cfm.en. But of course, I don't memorize the URL. I just search there. I search in Google SSRN, and then of course the database would just appear. Dito naman po sa SSRN, kung para po makita nyo na siya ay access o open access yung whole article, meron po siyang indication na ito po, download this paper. Another one would be for biology, for agriculture, for environmental science, for forestry, for sciences. Ito pong Picard Digital E-Library. So, meron po silang books, dissertations, serials, and other sources that you can use. So, mga full text din po ito. And then this one, which is for UK, of course, it's from the United Kingdom. These, though I don't go here for journal articles, kasi marami na naman po doon sa ibang databases, I use this core for teaching, kasi meron po sila ditong full access books. But then sometimes meron din po ditong mga journal articles that you can use. So that is core. And then, as you can see here, you research at core, meron din po siyang mga certain languages that are uploaded. For example, English, Portuguese, if you're interested. And then there would be indications that it is a full access or open access journal if it has this one, get PDF. Yung iba po wala. But then medyo marami din naman pong free sources. And then this one is PLOS, which is Public Library of Science. It's more on biological and medical researches. Ito pong PLOS.org. Kasi po, una po, nagsimula po sila na PLOS, group of scientists po ito na may mga journals. And then, nag-branch out na po itong PLOS into PLOS Biology, PLOS Medicine, yun po. So, it's more on biological researches and medical researches. And then this one is organized by the Indiana University, is the Digital Library of the Commons. So, also open access databases for different documents like journal articles, art, magazines, books, yun po. Dito po sa Digital Library of the Commons. And then for our, since I've been doing prior art search, ibig sabihin po din sa ating pong mga colleagues from engineering, for technology, for food technology, let's say you want to invent something, pwede din po sa agriculture, sometimes you want to have your invention, a new fertilizer, let's say, you can look at prior art documents. So, medyo critical po ang medyo mahirap po magkaroon ng invention. Because you're going to look at what was already invented by others. So you need to know what is already invented so that you can deviate from what is already invented and then contribute to that certain field. So sa patents or sa technology, you don't call that literature review, but you call that prior art search. So for patents, for technologies, for example, meron po kayong gustong i-invent na electric fan. So you could look at Google Patents to see what is already invented about electric fans. So ang kanya pong URL is patents.google.com. So when you go and research for different technologies, ito po usually ang lumalabas. Yan po. So meron pong information that about a certain invention, kung ano po ang kanyang features. So you're going to deviate from those certain features so that you can have your own invention. Para po mas mabilis na makakuha po tayo ng patent application. This is what I always use, which is SPASnet. This SPASnet is by the European Union. Ito po yung mga databases ng European Union. Though ano po, hindi naman po limited sa kung ano lang po ang na-invent sa Europe. But meron din pong from Japan, from the United States, and other places. Why am I showing you this? Because sa Philippines po kasi may rule po tayo na we cannot publish our invention kung siya po ay na-invento na sa ibang place pa po sa mundo. So dapat po yung mga invention dito sa Philippines ay unique siya in the whole world. So we cannot get our patent applications we if our technologies are not unique or novel in the whole world. Ganun po. So the next one would be, this is USPTO, or the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So dito din po sa search bar. So you can look at these databases for technologies that you want to look into. This one is WIPO, which is World Intellectual Property Office Patent Scope. So dito po sa WIPO, nandito din po yung yung mga inventions ng Philippines. So kasi po, this is a collection of patent applications from the whole world.